Stress is a response to a challenge. Anxiety is anticipation of a challenge, and depression is often what follows when you feel helpless to meet those challenges over time. And here's the thing most people don't realize. When you're in a prolonged anxious state, your body often responds as though you're under real threat. Elevated blood pressure, suppressed digestion, and poor sleep quality. Stress is not the enemy. Avoiding it is. Meeting it, training for it, growing through it, that is where real resilience is built. If you've ever felt like you're drowning in stress, like your body is tense, your mind won't quiet down, and no matter what you do, it's just relentless, you're not alone. I've been there too. In fact, I'm still navigating through one of the most challenging chapters of my life. So I pulled together the science. I went deep. And what I'm sharing in this episode are the real strategies, evidence-based and personally tested, that can help you build true resilience starting today. So let me say this from the start. This topic isn't theoretical for me. I've had more than a few chapters in my life where the weight of stress started to feel suffocating, and right now is one of them. And I don't share that for sympathy. I share it because I think a lot of people can relate. The kind of stress where you're functioning technically, but it feels like you're constantly running uphill with a backpack full of bricks. So I did what I tend to do when things feel overwhelming. I dove into the research. Because if I can understand what's happening on a biological level, I can find leverage, ways to change my response, even if I can't change the situation. And here's the core idea that emerged, one that runs through everything we'll cover today. Stress is unavoidable, but suffering isn't. There's a difference between a stressor, like a deadline, a breakup, a health scare, and the way your body and mind react to that stressor. The reaction is modifiable, trainable, even resilient. What you're about to hear is a comprehensive science-backed breakdown of how stress affects your brain and body, why it spirals into anxiety and depression, and how to short-circuit that loop using both ancient wisdom and cutting-edge tools. This is the stress manual I wish I had 20 years ago. So let's start with what happens in the body. The HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, is the hormonal cascade that drives the stress response. Cortisol and adrenaline flood the system, prepping us for action. But chronic activation leads to allostatic load, cumulative biological wear and tear. A 2018 study in psychoneuroendocrinology found that prolonged cortisol exposure is associated with hippocampal shrinkage and impaired emotional regulation. This is the key. The hippocampus helps us turn off the stress response, and when it atrophies, your ability to recover from stress gets worse. And what's fascinating is that this structure also appears to grow in response to challenge. London taxi drivers, for example, who undergo rigorous spatial navigation exams show increased hippocampal volume. The takeaway? Doing difficult things can physically reshape and strengthen the brain's stress recovery centers. In fact, a 2022 study in neurobiology of stress found that engaging in activities that require effortful mental challenge, including learning new skills or problem solving, is linked to hippocampal neurogenesis and cognitive resilience under stress. Conversely, obesity has been linked to hippocampal atrophy. A 2020 meta-analysis in Neuroimage found that individuals with higher BMI tended to have significantly smaller hippocampal volumes, independent of age. This suggests that lifestyle factors can either erode or reinforce stress resilience at a structural level. In addition, a large cohort study published in Neurology found that people with higher cardiorespiratory fitness had larger total brain volumes, including the hippocampus, and performed better on executive function tasks. Beyond the brain, stress impacts the immune system, metabolism, cardiovascular health, its whole body. Chronic stress increases inflammation through glucocorticoid resistance in immune cells and promotes insulin resistance, visceral fat gain, and sleep disruption. These are measurable cascading effects. In fact, a 2019 paper in Frontiers in Immunology showed that chronic psychological stress increases IL-6 and TNF-alpha, two key inflammatory cytokines linked to depression and aging. And a 2014 study from Brain Behavior and Immunity confirmed that stress-related elevations in IL-6 predicted greater vulnerability to mood disorders in at-risk individuals. Now let's talk about stress, anxiety, and depression. What's the difference? So here's where things blur a bit. Stress is a response to a challenge. Anxiety is anticipation of a challenge, and depression is often what follows when you feel helpless to meet those challenges over time. They activate overlapping systems, the amygdala, the HPA axis, inflammatory signaling, neurotransmitter imbalances. We know that elevated cortisol correlates with reduced serotonin and neuroplasticity, but inflammation is a big part of the story too. A 2015 paper in JAMA Psychiatry found that elevated C-reactive protein, or CRP, a general marker of inflammation, was associated with higher risk of developing depression over time, even in people with no previous mental health diagnosis. Additionally, functional MRI studies have shown that chronic stress impairs connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, reducing your ability to regulate emotion and fear responses. And here's the thing most people don't realize. When you're in a prolonged anxious state, your body often responds as though you're under real threat. Elevated blood pressure, suppressed digestion, and poor sleep quality. A 2021 meta-review published in Biological Psychology emphasized that even subclinical levels of anxiety are associated with systemic inflammation and autonomic imbalance, meaning even mild stress matters. So what we're seeing is that these aren't separate conditions. They're points along a stress-related spectrum, and often addressing the stress physiology helps all three. Now let's talk about practical application. Breathwork. This is the first one. It's simple, it's free, and it's incredibly powerful. A 2023 meta-analysis in Scientific Reports reviewed 14 studies on slow-paced breathing and found consistent reductions in cortisol, increased heart rate variability, and improved subjective calm in under 10 minutes. Personally, I use the 4-7-8 or 4-6 breathing pattern. 4 seconds in, 7 out, or 4 in, 6 out. It's not about the numbers, it's about extending the exhale to recruit your parasympathetic nervous system. This is a fast track out of fight or flight. This aligns with HRV biofeedback data, a method now used in clinical settings where improving HRV correlates with lower anxiety symptoms and better stress recovery. According to a 2020 review in Applied Psychophysiology and Biofeedback, HRV training showed medium to large effect size for reducing generalized anxiety. Cold exposure is another. Now, not everyone loves this, myself included, but the data is compelling. In fact, a 2022 study from Stanford's Lifestyle Medicine Department found that 2-minute cold plunges significantly boosted norepinephrine and beta endorphins. Participants reported enhanced mood and focus post-immersion, along with a noticeable reduction in anxiety levels. Now, supplements, I've tested many. The ones I personally rely on are magnesium L-threonate, which crosses the blood-brain barrier, L-theanine, which increases alpha brainwaves associated with relaxed focus, and ashwagandha, which has been shown in multiple randomized controlled trials to lower serum cortisol by up to 30%. In one meta-analysis in the Journal of Medicine in 2019, they reviewed 9 clinical trials, and they concluded that ashwagandha consistently reduced anxiety in stressed adults when compared to placebo. And creatine, often overlooked, has been shown in studies, including a 2021 randomized controlled trial published in Psychiatry Research, to enhance the efficacy of antidepressants and reduce depressive symptoms even on its own. A newer supplement gaining attention is saffron extract. So a 2016 double-blind placebo-controlled trial in the Journal of Affective Disorders found that 30 milligrams of saffron daily was as effective as fluoxetine or Prozac in reducing symptoms of mild to moderate depression. The mechanism may involve serotonin modulation and antioxidant activity, but what matters is this: natural compounds can meaningfully impact mood, and of course, movement. Resistance training has been my anchor. A 2018 review in JAMA Psychiatry concluded that strength training significantly reduces symptoms of both depression and anxiety across age groups. Not only does it modulate neurotransmitters, it builds a sense of agency, the embodied reminder that you can overcome resistance. And paired with aerobic training, shown in trials like the SMILE study to be equally effective as SSRIs for moderate depression, and you have a full spectrum mood enhancer. Now, next I want to talk about something that's worked for me, and that's Stoicism. And here's where science meets philosophy. When stress makes you feel powerless, Stoic philosophy brings you back to what is in your control, your response. Amor fati, it's the dichotomy of control, seeing every challenge as an opportunity to practice virtue, patience, courage, discipline. This isn't just poetic. It overlaps with what we call cognitive reappraisal in psychology. In fact, CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is directly inspired by Stoicism. Epictetus taught us that it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgment about them. That principle was echoed in rational emotive behavioral therapy, and later in CBT, which remains the gold standard for stress-related disorders. There's also emerging data. A 2021 pilot study published in Behavioral Sciences tested a modern Stoicism training protocol over several weeks. And what they found is reductions in rumination and negative affect, as well as increased self-efficacy in handling adversity. These are the building blocks of resilience, not just coping, but transforming under pressure. Now, let me leave you with 5 core takeaways that integrate both the science and the experience. First, understand the biology. Cortisol, inflammation, neurotransmitters, they're real and they're trainable. In your hippocampus, it can grow, especially when you do hard things. Next, use your breath. Slow exhalations activate your parasympathetic nervous system. Breath is a remote control center for your stress physiology. Move your body, whether it's walking or weightlifting. Exercise burns off stress hormones and boosts resilience, promoting neurochemistry. It literally enlarges brain structures that regulate emotion. Also, supplement strategically. Tools like magnesium, L-theanine, ashwagandha, creatine, and even saffron can support calm, clarity, cognition, and the effectiveness of therapy. And lastly, reframe through philosophy. Stoicism is an abstract. It's a cognitive toolkit. Focus on what you can control, accept what you can't, and grow from the hard parts. This chapter of life is testing me, and maybe you're going through something similar right now. But if there's one thing I've learned through the science and the struggle, it's this: stress is not the enemy. Avoiding it is. Meeting it, training for it, growing through it, that is where real resilience is built. Thanks so much for being here. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.